The one, the only, Monica Perez, Magic.
Hello.
How are you?
Fine. How are you?
I'm good. So I need to say this to people. Apparently, from time to time, if you're watching me, I may go cattywampus and sideways. Is that true?
That was my observation when I was in the waiting room.
The green room. That's what us professionals call
the
it.
green room. I'm sorry.
The green room, Monica. You podcast. You're a radio professional at heart. You should know.
I'm a little rusty.
What are you doing? What are you looking at?
I'm seeing if my good mic is on. That's my good mic. See? I'm a good mic.
Oh, you got a good mic.
Well, it's not a great mic. I think it's the same mic that you have, but I put so much stuff on it to keep the peas from popping that I can't see the light. I don't know if I'm on a hot mic or a cold mic.
Do you know why me and you have basically the same mic?
Huh?
Do you know why?
Yes, because I sent you it.
Because a friend of mine sent it to me. She got tired of me doing a podcast with my little earbuds.
You were doing it with the
computer
ambient. You can't do that. That's bad. Hi, Daryl.
And Franny.
Hey, Fran. Franny's there with Mommy.
Hi, Mom.
Hey, Mom. Mom loves you. I don't know why, Clint. I think it's because you're nice to me. Anyone who's
what do you
nice
mean you don't
girls.
know why? I'm a nice guy.
Oh, yeah, right. I forgot about that. Sometimes you say crazy stuff like, I got the gun, so if you've got the food, I think I'm going to your house. Like, that's not okay.
No, my dad told me a long time ago, because he's military, is we have enough to take care of ours, but at the end of the day, if the bad people try to impose their free will on us, we will impose our free will on them, and then their supplies become our supplies.
That I completely understand.
If you're a bad guy,
totally valid. Yes.
If you have something we need, then your stuff becomes our stuff in our family.
But if you know that your neighbor is a prepper and your plan is to use your gun to get his dried food away, that's not a good plan.
As long as my daughter can eat and he takes, just gives us some crumbs, I'm fine.
Mm-hmm.
If not, we may run into some issues.
Do you see why my mom loves you? She loves you. She loves Tennessee. And you don't.
Because I don't cuss.
Use vulgarity, I think, is. No, I don't cuss or swear, but I use vulgarity. Okay. See the difference? I'm a Catholic. So if you curse, you're damning someone to hell. If you swear, you're asking God to bear witness. Mm-hmm. But if you just use vulgarity, it's not really a sin, except for, I guess, I'm not honoring my mom. So she has the power to make it a sin.
Yeah. I like how in your life, and we all do this, but we have ways to circumnavigate the principles we want to live by. I want to eat good, except on free days, my birthday, Fridays, Monday.
That sounds like my cocktail schedule. It's like I'm giving up drinking except for when someone's at my house, when I'm at somebody else's house, when I'm out, when I'm at a bar, if it's a weekend or a holiday or a day off or I'm on vacation or no one's around, no one can see me, yada, yada.
Hey, JJ Boogie.
Yes, that's true.
That is, listen, there's no reason to call me out.
True.
This isn't the Trump tapes.
The Trump tape.
Thank you very much.
It's so hard for me to engage in that like low-hanging fruit BS. Like I don't care.
You are the kind of person that has to climb the tree and go get the really good fruit at the top.
The principles, the ideology. I just look back on all the years and decades and opportunities that this idea of incrementalism and just the government infringing a little, screwing up with the checks and balances, making you question your own rigid adherence to principles. And then look where we are. This is a prison planet of our own devising. We completely allow ourselves to live in the prisons of our own homes because they scared us with the existence of microbes, which, by the way, we evolved or were put here side by side with.
Yeah. Have you read, and I didn't send it to you. Let me adjust my camera here. I didn't send it to you, and I should have. One of the topics was that Trump is saying that if states, I can't remember the exact wording, but if states are refusing to handle the riots or follow certain protocols. He's going to withhold federal funding.
I know. That's
that scares
why
me, because but here's why, because a lot of my friends and I would go, yay, because we think the state should stop that too. The problem I have with it, once the precedent has been set, the next president who deems something else worthy could impose that same thing, and now I'm screwed.
But it's right, of course, and that's why you prefer the principle of subsidiarity, which is you want, and that is the principle that our country was founded on, which is the government has very little responsibilities. There are very few mandates. Anything that the government does, that the federal government does, the federal government is going to control, and that takes away there shouldn't be a Department of Education. There's going to be a Department of Police or whatever. There shouldn't be any of that. It's unconstitutional. And the problem is, as you can see, is that once you become dependent, it was like when states wanted to have the drinking age of 18. They were pressured by many political groups that wanted to raise it to 21. And the only thing that really worked was when highway funds were withheld from states that didn't have that drinking age. And personally, the intercontinental or the cross highway system, I'm not a fan of anyway. That was unconstitutional.
Well, I think we're starting, and I don't think we're starting to. I think people have seen it for a long time, but there's the chickens are coming home to roost now. Exactly. When you have things like the federal Department of Education, when it's federalized, the problem we have is the things that are needed in a community are maybe different. As long as the basics are covered, it's hard to tell somebody in an urban community where there's 10,000, 5,000 students in a school, and then there's a school with 400, that you all have to meet the same standards and learn the same things. And you kind of end up going, and I think we lose critical thinking because all we're doing is testing kids. We'll just teach kids how to take tests.
Can we talk about this for a second?
No.
I don't know what your agenda is, but
real quick, let's say hi to Mike. He said hi, that he made it.
Oh, so, hi, Mike.
Thank you, sir.
Nice.
All right, let's talk about it. Go for it.
All right. So what is it that kids should learn? What do you think, in your opinion? Like, let's really puzzle through this.
Well,
is there a universal standard that you feel like is a minimum? And if kids can do that, that's really all you owe them as far as kind of an obligation to get them on their feet. Is there anything?
Well, let me start off saying that most of the questions that you ask me, I feel I can answer to a certain point. A lot of questions you ask me, I don't feel I'm either researched enough, educated enough, or smart enough to really talk about that much. So I'm very transparent with that, but I'll give you my 2 cents on this. I think if you go back 100 years, the education system filled in the gaps of what they weren't learning at home. In other words, kids were learning how to do stuff, make stuff, think at their homes because they were working in the fields. They were having to help mom and dad around the house. They learned how to do They were learning angles and math and stuff because it was practical. I have to build things. I'm having to dig up stuff. I'm having to engage in life at the age of 10. I'm having to cook. And so as we got older, I think we added more to our education system that I don't think is really should be their job. I personally think the thing that I got out of school is the ability to think critically. And so I do think there ought to be some math standards, some history standards, and some English standards. And beyond that, I think everything else can be talked about. I think learning about our political system is really good. But again, who's controlling the agenda?
That's a good point. I mean, this is something I've thought about, and I have a lot of thoughts on it. I'm not sure I know the absolute, this is how it should be. But first of all,
we can't both be stupid, though. You've got to be the smart one.
It's not. No, I think that this is here's the thing. I even from what you're saying is that this is actually something where you don't need. Well, perhaps it is helpful to read what other people have thought about the problem, but you don't need to, because this is something that we both have experience in as people who grew up in this country and as parents who are raising kids who are growing up. And I think if we want to just kind of, what I like to do is I try to really look at the fundamentals of my own experience. And I guess for me, my greatest education happened after I was out of school, because it wasted a lot of time for me to be in school sifting through. It's like the mainstream media. It's like what I do now. I mean, I sift through a lot of bullshit to see where, sorry, Mom, to see where there is there's some facts I can pull out, but really understanding, I like the tools, which is what they say Common Core is about, but but Common Core is absolutely not about this. But I really care about the tools. So I want to be able to read and write. I think grammar and vocabulary are really important. However, the only way I really learned about grammar was by writing, by having a blog. Like then I really understood the power of a well-constructed sentence. And similarly, math. Now, math, you can basically, the right way to teach math is for a person to read it, to understand it, to do problems. And then when you reach a conceptual roadblock, then you ask questions of a teacher. And I think you make an excellent point. Reading, writing, and arithmetic. Excellent, Mom. Holy cow, the 3 R's. I am absolutely notorious for reinventing the wheel, but I don't mind doing that because I find it from induction and not just like somebody telling me. And then the other thing is that you brought up, which was a very excellent point, is that really, I think Adam Smith talks about this, what if you're going to have a representative system, people have to have a certain amount of either knowledge or literacy, or there's something that makes it okay for us to govern ourselves and coordinate in a system that requires our participation. So we should probably understand how that works. And I always say, so yeah, I think that would be a critical thing, because Adam Smith says public education is a requirement because you need like soldiers who can think and all this kind of stuff. I always kind of wondered about that, but I would say,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, no, the last thing is just that I would say, I would extend what you're saying and say this, that anything that we cannot understand, the government should not be permitted to control.
I agree. I think I used to have a class called civics when I was in school. And I think one of the problems I think we have now is we're so busy teaching our kids a lot of stuff, which we can have a separate conversation about the merit of each class and what it brings to the value. But we don't know now when you're young what our role is as the citizens, as we the people. What does that actually mean? We're not learning that at age 14, 15, 16. And before we get to the schools part, that's a parent's fault too. Because with the freedom comes the other side of that coin, which is responsibility. And we are now putting kids through school when they get out. The reason they feel disconnected from this government that we and you both agree is out of control is because we have not shown them where they can engage at in appropriate ways, and why there are separations of power, and how your job, Sally and Tom, as you get older, is your job is to stand in between those powers, the branches, and go, no, this is where we the people have the power. We have the lever. You know, we control the fulcrum, but we don't teach that anymore. And so now we're graduating a bunch of kids who just feel the government's out there by these people that we don't really know, care, like. We don't know how it works. We just feel like everything's imposed on us. And you're asking me to do calculus. And I don't, how does any of that work?
You've just triggered like 10 different things that I would love to hit.
And I'm not even finished. I had 2 other things.
Yeah, keep going. Keep going.
No. The other thing I was going to say is it's hard. We don't know where the limits of our government are if we're not teaching it our kids. I don't think the schools should be social experiments, which I think we are handing a lot of parenting off to our schools. And that can go from the daycare part of it to the social experiment side of it. And then I think a lot of things too. You said earlier, Monica, that you think it wasted a lot of your time. And I can see that, because I don't think every kid's meant to go to college. I think that's a false statement to kids. I think we should be realistic. But also some of the stuff that I learned in school was not so much about the subject, but it was how to navigate the problems in the subject. I do think some classes that I look back as a waste taught me how to think critically and figure out things. I may never use that specific subject, but I will use the thinking and the logical way to approach things that subject required. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, and I'm done.
Yeah, it's great. No, I love that.
JJ Boogie, you have responsibility without freedom as well. Just saying. Yes, thank you.
I might have to think about that. You might have to expand on that.
Yeah,
Jason. Okay, so here's a lot of stuff. I wanted to hit that. You were saying you had civics. And I didn't actually have civics. I grew up in New York, so that's probably why they probably eliminated sooner. There was a woman, Charlotte Iserbyt. Have you ever heard of her?
No.
She was in the Department of Education when Reagan was running it, or when he was in office. She did an expose. It was one of the really validating things that came out of Alex Jones early on. Now, whatever you think about Alex Jones, the reason so many people he caught on is that he had some really valuable stuff up front, and she was one of them. She revealed the members of Skull and Bones because she had her father who was a member of it, his directory. She talks about the Department of Education. She makes a great point, which is this focus on STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, which is the reason that we focus on that is that the big tech lobbies for it. So they lobby for free education to subsidize their workforce. And that's why they also lobby for immigrant visas from places like India, where they get these people educated on the community's dime, and then they leave and come here, and they don't have to bid for the higher salaries that our people pay for their own college have to. But she said STEM negates civics. So I always thought it takes the place of civics, and the civics and the trivium, which was rhetoric, logic, and grammar. So grammar is information, logic is how to think, and that we all get. But the rhetoric, how to persuade and all that, the civic stuff, we do not get. And she pointed out, was it her, somebody else, that the liberal arts that you don't get when you focus on STEM, which includes civics, persuasion, all that stuff, rhetoric, it was called liberal arts because the free men only were allowed to have it. So in Rome, when the slaves were Greek, and the Greeks were smarter than the Romans, I mean, if you want to generalize, so you had a Greek slave who was your accountant and ran your plantation. You did not want him to know about rights and rhetoric and civics and everything like that. So the Greeks were about science and all that. And then the Romans were about administration and law. And the liberal arts were really a weapon in the hands of the plebes, of the slaves. You didn't want that. And so what we've done is, you were saying how the parents have kind of let go their responsibility. And I think we were absolutely taught to do that. That one of the articles that you flagged in my tweeting this week was about the Atlantic. I called it the spiral of bullshit. Yeah. Because
there goes your mom again. You're making
sorry,
your mom
Mom.
upset.
Sorry.
And Jason, we're going to pull your quote up in a minute, but I want to make sure we finish Monica's thought.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, you'll never finish me, but I'll just try to hit
them
quickly.
No, we'll be good.
I'll do it quickly. No. So we've been taught. So this Atlantic article was about how we did everything wrong with the pandemic, and this is why it's still going on. And it lists literally 10 things we did wrong. Like, we did things one at a time instead of all at once. We copied other people's behavior. We criticized other people. We listened to the wrong people, all this kind of crap. And in the end, it was like, oh, we're just too fucking stupid. And we're just going to have this permanent state of infectiousness and terror. And that plays right into this idea that they tell us that we cannot really educate our kids. We're not qualified to do it. And at the same time, the tax rate goes up. They absolutely encourage with their policies putting women in the workforce. I don't care. I mean, we don't need to talk about whether women or men are better off at home, but to double the taxation and get both parents into the workforce, that increases unemployment across the board, because a lot of times the couples are both successful and employed. Anyway, that takes people away from being able to take care of their kids and feeling that they have that responsibility. I mean, this is a plot to get the state to be the ones to teach the kids. So Stacey Abrams, the imaginary governor of Georgia, she says that she thinks she won, but she didn't. Yeah.
She addressed the governors during the DNC. So yeah.
Oh, like fellow governors.
Yeah.
And it was all those like hologram pictures like you see in the NBA games. Yeah. Like they were also imaginary governors. So she talked about cradle to career, that the government, she was saying stuff like 3 or 4 years old is too late to get for the state to get their hands on the minds of children. So it's all intentional. And then the last thing I'll say is something that you touched on, which comes from one of my favorite books, Enemy of the State, Our Enemy of the State, by Albert J. Nock, who says that state power and social power are a zero-sum game. And as you relinquish your power, your social power to the state, you lose it. You don't have the power to do both.
Yeah, it's not power operates. There's a vacuums. If you're going to take your hands off, something will put their hands on. That's the rule that I live by. And I think somewhere down the road, I am a big believer on chasing the American dream, but I think they've convinced a lot of Americans to chase the governmental dream. I think we're chasing the dream of the government, not the American dream sometimes.
They were saying stuff like your school loans. I think they did this. The school loans, your school loans would be forgiven if you went into government. That just really enraged me. What a ridiculous. But I have to say, one thing that you just said hits on the immigration issue. I firmly believe that everyone has a right to work and travel. If all property were private and all businesses were private, and I wanted to rent you an apartment or give you a job, it doesn't matter to me what part of the earth you came from. But I do think that the fact that we have allowed voting to take the place of voting is supposed to just pick the representatives to execute the foundational laws, but we allow voting now to manipulate the foundational laws. So there is no right to vote, in my opinion. So this idea of the right to work and travel, why does that have to be paired with the right to vote? Why do you have to become a citizen to work here? So I object to having immigrants come over. Clearly the political parties manipulate the immigration situation to change the voting makeup of this country. And I just thought, well, you don't have to amnesty. You don't have to give citizenship to people who have come over illegally. You can just talk about, I call it illegal entry disenfranchisement. So it's like felony disenfranchisement. If you came over illegally to work, there should be no punishment. Stay. But you should never be allowed to vote, because there's a moral hazard in giving the vote to people who are here, to 10 million people all of a sudden. There's no connection with that. And they are used to, so because they did not have the education in our system, they will bring their own education with them, an education they do not realize contributed to the lack of opportunity in their countries, perhaps. So I think that it really
You just started a totally separate podcast on immigration I want to touch on. But I want to say one other thing I think schools can be used for, and I've seen this if it's done correctly, is I think when you now, I think more than ever, is to expose children to things so they can discover their own thoughts. In other words, when I was in school, I had an English teacher, and I'll never forget her. And she was a great English teacher, but she started every class with 5 minutes of different kind of music. The first 5 minutes, nobody talked. Is mostly classical or jazz or something. And she said, because I don't know if you'll ever be exposed to this kind of music, but I've done this for 30 years, and there's a handful of kids that it sparked something in. And that's not an official mandate of a school system. But once you get people who understand teaching children is better than teaching them how to take tests, it allows them to do that. And I think that is, there's kids that would have never been exposed to that. And that's just one small example of something.
That really goes to something I was going to say, because I got a full scholarship to Harvard as a transfer student from a community college. And I also went to Stanford. I went to business school and law school. Now, my husband always says that he really learned critical thinking in law school. I learned it from my father, who was a truck driver. So it doesn't matter where you learn it. Some people learn it and some people don't. So that can be very helpful. But the two things I really, really got out of it was what you're touching on, which is I was exposed to ideas and people, not just teachers, but other students, because the standards were very high at those schools. So for the first time ever, I was surrounded with people who, especially at Stanford Law School, and they really expanded the ways I could think, and they really checked me. And I used to make assumptions and generalize. And you have to know when you're doing that. And they would call you out on assumptions that you could not prove. And it really helped me refine my thinking. So that
happens with me on this podcast. On most podcasts I do. I think podcasting, if you're engaging in long form conversations, that's education. That's a great way to keep
absolutely
to learn to critically think. When you call me on BS, or if I call you on something I disagree with, it's on my face, it's on your face. There are times we both go, well, I see your point, but, and usually what I do is I get off and I go Google it. I'm like, let me Google why. Here's what I Google: why is Monica Perez wrong? That's what I Google.
And you got 0 hits, right?
It's just too many
returns.
pages.
No.
Hey, one last thing on the school thing, and I've said it a bunch. I'm going to keep saying it. Now that we're doing all this virtuals, it's another article. A teacher called the police to a kid's house because they saw a toy gun, a little dart gun thing, and he was running around with it. I'm telling you, it is letting. You know, did you read the article about the document they want you to sign where you don't tell your parents and it blocks the parents from seeing?
No.
Well, while we're talking, I'm going to look it up and I'm going to bring that article up. But let's do this. Let's pull up JJ Boogie's. Oh, okay. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
While you're doing that, I want to say that this thing about college, you said college isn't for everybody.
No, it's not.
I believe that the coronavirus thing, how they're doing college right now, the whole Bernie Sanders free college, and the Operation Varsity Blues, where they are putting parents in jail for making outsized donations to private colleges that let people like me get scholarships. It's insane. And I think it's all about closing down smaller private schools so that and the difference between public school and private school, in my observation, is night and day. I mean, the public schools are pure brainwashing, indoctrination, BS. Oh my gosh. And the private schools have a lot of that, but they also have some fundamental curriculum stuff like basic books that an educated person needs to read. I mean, not even necessarily, but at the very least, their propaganda has to be more sophisticated. But I think that they're going to have like this public school for the absolute masses, and then just the super, super elite at the very top at the Ivy Leagues is going to be the only people, and they're going to be the rulers, which they are already.
All right, let's do this. JJ Boogie's blowing our stuff up. Let's put this up here. Can you read that while you're eating your popcorn?
It's not popcorn. It's candy corn. It's candy corn.
Candy corn's like, awful. That's the food of the devil. It's
awful. I hate it. It doesn't even taste good. But I feel unwell, and I didn't eat.
Do you have the COVID?
No, but you know what I have? A house full of absolute smoke and ash. You would not believe how close I am to this fire. It's called.
I didn't mean to make fun of that. I'm sorry.
No. I mean, the second I saw it coming over the hill, like it was like a week ago, I looked and I was like, that fire is close. And they didn't put it out. And they said they didn't put it out because the cloud cover was so low. But there were no clouds that day. And anybody who tells me that, I'm like, there were no clouds that day. And if they did, one thing they can do with their spraying is push the cloud cover down. That is a fact. So I don't know what they were up to, but I knew they were going to let that thing burn. And really, I mean, if you want to have shortness of breath, respiratory problems, anything like that, it's much more likely you're going to get it from smoke than you are from common cold.
Well, I'm sorry about that. I've got some friends that live out there. And it's pretty bad. Can you read that, or do I need to?
I'm really unwell. Yeah. With freedom comes responsibility. Yes. But even under a tyrannical government, we should have more responsibility as parents to teach our children and show them freedom principles, and also to deprogram them from government indoctrination and propaganda. Yes, absolutely. Dumbing Down, curriculum compulsory. There's like 2 books I own called Dumbing Down. One is Charlotte Iserbyt, and the other is John Taylor Gatto. Yeah, John Taylor Gatto, Dumbing Us Down, the Hidden Curriculum of Compulsory Schooling. Yes, absolutely. I was going to mention him earlier. Franny Dr. Dre boasts his daughter got into USC all on her own years after he made a $70 million. I'm going to film school. How come nothing happened to Dr. Dre about this? There's absolutely nothing wrong with people giving huge amounts of money for one kid's place. He probably paid, how many kids did he pay for? 7,000? Like how many people would get paid for by that? I mean, that's just absolutely crazy. Yes, we do have that responsibility. But I will say what is becoming crystal clear with this corona thing is that, and this is what I've always said, I can handle anything, including food independence, health independence, any of it, as long as I have some warning. Because what I've done with my life is I've set it up to have 14 hours a day of work, from cooking, cleaning, shopping for food, helping my kids with homework, doing podcasts, cleaning my room, whatever. I am completely busy with all that stuff. So I didn't spend any time learning how to grow potatoes, although you can literally just throw a potato in the dirt and it will grow. I'm just saying, I teach my kids what I can, but they're plugged into these computers all the time, and the struggle that I went through to try to get them off it. And now that's impossible because they're just on it constantly. But their world, their environment there, we have no access to it. We can't see it. It's in here. It's in there. We can't even hear it. It's not even like watching TV with them. And for them to have different ideas from that, they get ostracized. And it's really hard in this more highly controlled world. I mean, now I regret not having become a farmer.
But
I could have married one. It would have been so easy.
Your husband will listen to this and go, "You've done pretty well for yourself, though. You did pretty good."
He's a normie. We're in the system, and that's that.
Well, but I want to go back a little bit to JJ Boogie's thing and what he said, and I think we're all on the same page. I think parents, when I said schools, I think should fill in where the parents don't educate. That's what I was talking about. It's hard. I think it's hard if you have parents who are involved in teaching your kids on a daily basis and you are engaged. I'm not saying it's not possible, but it's hard for a school system to counteract that, because normally when a parent is engaged in the right way, they also have they have communities. It used to be with churches, or it can be with other family members. And I think one of the reasons it's easy to instill propaganda into our kids nowadays is because parents, and I'm not saying all of us, because we have jobs, they drop them off and they pick them up. And then the only way, and my daughter and I talked about this the other day, the only way a lot of parents consider being engaged is I go online and check if my daughter or son made an F today or an A today, and then I hold them accountable for the grade. I don't talk to them about how you're getting along with your teacher. I don't talk with them how you get along with your other student classmates. Tell me, I see you made an 87. What did that mean? What were you studying? What did you miss? And I think that one thing that is killing kids is this micromanaging, or this ability for parents to see every single grade every single day. My daughter and I have had this conversation. She's got friends where their parents will, before their child gets home, knows the grades they've made for that day. And they'll say, "Why do you went from having a B in that class to a C today?" When I grew up, I had 2 weeks, 4 weeks, or 6 weeks. If I knew I had a bad grade, I had time to fix it on my own before I got my ass whipped when I got to my house. I apologize to your mother. I'm sorry I said the word ass. But I guess what I'm saying is it allowed us time to fix our own problems. And now we're micromanaging them.
And not only that, but I try to tell my kids when they're doing their homework, because they go to these schools that are really, despite the brainwashing, it's a very good education. I mean, if you were a liberal, whatever, you know what I mean? Like, you're kind of liberal Democrat fantasy of what the world is like. This is really good education. And I try to tell them, my daughter was doing something on history, AP US history. And I said, I was looking at her textbooks and I was like, this is great. I mean, it's not great, like from a libertarian point of view, but it was just very well written. It was easy to read. It had the information in there. It didn't like scream complete bullshit to me. And I said, look, this is what you need to do. I said, did you read this chapter? It's like has all the answers to your question. She said, well, no, she only assigned this and that. I said, no. Kick back, get yourself a little soda, sit in your bed, and get some candy corn and read it like it's a book. Like read it like you are interested in it, like you want to know, because this is a good book. And don't worry about, and even when they're like stressed out about homework, I'm like, look, give yourself 45 minutes or an hour and a half or whatever it is for this subject. Do your best, really think about it. And if it's not finished, it doesn't matter what your grades are, just embrace it as a learning experience. And then maybe you'll get something out of it. And I don't care if it's what your teacher wants, 50-50, the teacher wants you to get something out of it. They want you to get out of it for a political bias they might not even be aware of. But really think about it. You know, we're talking colonialism, you're talking American Indians, you're talking about slaves, you're talking about people who are fleeing religious persecution. And what gives you the right to be there? Like, think about that. What are property rights?
And those are topics that require or should warrant conversation instead of learning the 3 most important dates. Why are those dates important to begin with? Hey, mom,
and they are because of context. But
that's it. We missed the context. You don't have
to memorize them if you understand it. Like if I were going to do it with kids, I would just have them have it in order. I wouldn't even necessarily need them to tell me the number of the year.
Yeah, I think the best teachers I ever had sparked curiosity and conversation with me. And they're the ones about even topics I really didn't care about. They are the ones that got me thinking, because back in the day, again, tests were important, but it wasn't so much about that. I just think our education system's changed a little bit. And I'm going to read you something a teacher posted that and I may try to do it in a minute, but
I'm super sorry about my candy corn, but I really haven't been feeling well, and I'm so bummed about.
Well, you need to get better. We want you to stay better. If you teach your children
it's just
freedom,
the air. It doesn't even.
You will mark them for abuse from the state agents. It's a tough choice. True. Yep. And then Franny said, "Yeah, parent portal. That is 100% true." Well, so most schools, like my daughter,
have that.
I can go straight in and see what they did that day before they get home.
I ignore that stuff, and then
But a lot of parents don't.
I miss things. I know. It's bad. Like the expectation is that
I think it's
you're
terrible
all up in their stuff.
I think it's terrible for kids. I think it's terrible. I used to get progress reports, and they say, "Okay, Clint, you got a D." And my dad would look at me and said, "You got a choice. You can get your ass whipped when if you fail or make a D, or you're smarter than this." And I had 6 weeks, and I knew what was at the end of 6 weeks, and then it was up to Clint.
Mm-hmm.
And every now and then, my mom, once or twice a week, would look at me and go, "Hey, are you working on that? Let me see your folder." And I'd be like, "Yeah, here it is." Yeah. But they weren't looking every day and hounding me because the pressure. Here's what I think. I think parents, the same parents that live through their kids on the athletic field, are starting to live through their kids in the academic fields now.
Yeah, and it's very sad for those people too, because they spent their whole lives doing the academics and now the athletics, and the kids can't do it. But I have 2 things to say about that. One is I give my kids a choice. I say either I can help you, and I never wanted to do this, but the schools they're in are hard now. So that I can sit there and look at your planner and go over your homework every single night, keep you on track, and before you do anything leisurely, let's talk about your homework. Or you can do it all yourself, and if you get anything below an A-, your every notch below that is a week without electronics over the summer, or a week where you're grounded or whatever. So
holy
B+,
mackerel.
Yeah, it's great. Oh, so last time my son chose sink or swim, winner takes all, and he lost electronics for like 4 weeks over the summer. And when the semester started, he said, let's just check homework every night. Because that's, and he was fine with it. Like, it's just, and I think you have to teach kids how to do stuff like that. You think that stuff is intuitive. It's okay to hold their hands. But I would say also when you said the teacher made it interesting or whatever, if it doesn't have inherent value, I'm not sure it needs to be taught. So if you cannot impart to the child the inherent value, which would spark the interest, then maybe that kid just is really not smart enough to understand that depth of thinking, in which case he's on the wrong track.
Yeah, but here's the issue you have, I think, is the slippery slope of who's defining inherent value.
No, right. I'm saying there is an objective truth. I am not saying that has anything to do with what actually happens. That's why I don't like government mandated school. That's why I objected to Adam Smith. And I was supposed to, as I was raised a libertarian, I was supposed to love Adam Smith, but I read it and I was like, that's not true. So he said that government should be responsible for schooling because it is. That's why, we started this conversation. I said, what is it that they must know? And you said how the government works and civics. And I guess I would go back and say my mom's 3 R's is better because you know how I figured out how the government worked?
Your parents.
A little bit, but yeah. No, they did. I usually have it like literally within my hand's reach. The Constitution. I mean, I usually have it.
Yeah, but and I like that. The issue comes from a lot of, and don't take this the wrong way, but we have to acknowledge that there are people that are living in different different places that if they read that, they would still need somebody to explain to them what some of that means.
I'm not sure about that because I think that's where it goes wrong. I think that's where psychology and sociology and that Atlantic spiral of bullshit article, I think that's where it all goes wrong, is that and that's what people don't like about Catholicism, is that I'm not sure if it's meant as a guide. I'm not sure it's okay to require it be interpreted.
Well, okay, let me explain what I'm talking about because, and this may be too far down the rabbit hole. We'll pull ourselves back out. Too down. Well, I volunteer at a group. I've helped a local group organization called YCAP, and they help inner city kids. And when I say inner city kids, it's not just any minority. There's plenty. There's all races, but one of the things they have in common, for the most part, is they come from either families that are stressed because you got a grandmother or an aunt that are raising children and they're working 2 jobs, or a mom and a dad, or just a mom. Most of the cases, just a mom. But what's happening is a lot of the kids we deal with, and I'm talking hundreds in just my community, don't have food at home. They don't know if they're going to have electricity when they get home. They don't have people to help them with their homework when they get home. They're running the streets. You think I'm kidding? When they go to school and they're required to learn algebra, they don't really care because when they go home, there's no one there to say good job or bad job. They're 9 to 10, 11, 13-year-olds raising themselves. You hand that person a constitution, they're not going to be able to read that and go, I don't know what this has to do with this. I haven't had dinner since yesterday.
Because it's not relevant to their world.
That's what I'm saying.
It's not relevant to their world.
Somebody's got to sit down and show them why it is.
Right. And I think what is relevant to their world, I think if you want to take like a stereotypical example of, let's say, what's important in what's relevant in the inner city. Let's say you believe The Wire, and the inner city is a bunch of drug dealers using black market to really get ahead because they can't compete with McDonald's by opening McDougal's. They just have to do what they have to do. Very good at business, very good at math, very good at surveillance, at self-defense. There are real things that have value in those communities. And the reason the other stuff doesn't have value, I believe, is that it is intentionally inaccessible to them. And I think that if you take away kind of welfare laws and progressive taxation and the drug war, black markets, all that kind of stuff, even compulsory schooling. I mean, that's what John Taylor Gatto did. He taught in the inner city, and the kids would come and say, I don't care about Shakespeare. And he would either say, yes, you do, and this is why, or what do you care about? And the one, I don't know if the kid said good pizza, and the other kid said, I like to swim after school. And he just literally let them sneak out of class and write, food reviews of all the pizza in the city, or keep a list of all the attributes of the public pools in the city. He had them add real value, and a lot of other skills came along with that.
But if they didn't have somebody like that acknowledged and saw that as an opportunity to teach,
he quit.
And the other, and the other side of it is, you've said it, and I've been lucky enough. A lot of the critical thinking you learned from your dad. Yeah. A lot of these kids, they emulate what they see every day, and they don't see people that care about the Constitution, because it doesn't affect what I got to get done. But I haven't had a shower in 2 days.
That's why I was saying,
that's a big deal.
That's what I was saying, is that it has to have inherent value. And if it doesn't actually have inherent value to you, then what does and why?
That's why I think it's important. That's why education, I think. But here's the thing, and thank you, John Jasper said he's going to get popcorn.
I'm sorry. I know it's super tacky, but I was so not feeling well. And it was the only thing I could reach. And this show started at lunchtime.
But here's the issue I have, is the teaching the Constitution part. I think that's fine for schools. The volunteer part of it, a lot of the stuff that the communities need, I don't think should be the charge of the schools. There should be churches and groups filling in. We have abdicated so much of taking care of the people around us to the government. I'm not even talking about welfare. I'm not talking about that. I'm just saying, hey, I don't have to take care of my neighbor as much. Why? Because somebody else will step in. It used to be, when I grew up, when my neighbors got sick, I watched this with my eyes. My dad, you did not have to ask my dad to come cut your grass. You did not have to ask my mom to put groceries in a bag and put them on your front doorstep and ring the doorbell. And I'm not talking about just the people next to them. I'm talking about once they heard that and they knew you were taken care of.
That's like when I had babies in Texas. Every night for 30 days straight, people I didn't even really know would bring a big basket of food. And even if they didn't make it, they would go to the local place. And here's the value of that. And why this universal basic income, what's happening with the Corona times right now, is intentionally, one thing they keep saying over and over again is that through no fault of their own, some of your neighbors are completely effed. They're losing their business. They can't go out either because they're sick or because our policies have brought them to their knees, even though they've spent their entire lives building a business. And when they take that, so that convinces the people that these people who are just innocent victims and have nothing, that they must take government handouts. And it convinces people who still have a job that what can you do? You have to give those government handouts. But without the government, the way it used to be, what you were talking about, if someone was a bum and not going to work, those baskets of food would stop. And what you do when you have a community is you can keep an eye on each other, what people really need. You can prevent them from taking advantage, from diverting resources without contributing production. But you cannot do that. And the further away it gets from that, like the UBI, Universal Basic Income, the less, there's any connection between
you lose the connection between effort and reward. You lose the effort. You also lose the self-esteem.
Production and consumption.
Yeah.
Production and consumption.
You also lose that self-esteem component, which is vital, that I feel good about myself, because then that bleeds through on how you deal with those around you. That's
right. We're turning it to pets.
You can't see it. Hey, we turned this topic into a great topic. We got tweets to get to.
Sorry.
But no, I'm not mad, but I got to read you this quote. So there was a teacher that posted this tweet that they pulled it down, but it's just got so many likes and so many comments. But I'm just going to read it to you, and I'm going to have to squint a little bit because I don't have my glasses. So this fall, virtual class discussions will have many potential spectators, parents, siblings, etc., in the same room. We'll never be quite sure who is overhearing the discourse. What does this do for the equity and inclusion work? Then his next tweet: how much have students depended on the somewhat secure barriers of our physical classrooms to encourage vulnerability? How many of us have installed some version of, quote, what happens here stays here to help with this? And it goes on. While conversations about race are in my wheelhouse and remain a concern in the no walls environment, I must I am most intrigued by the damage that helicopter or snowplow parents can do in the honest conversations about gender and sexuality. And here's the last one. And while conservative parents, air quote, conservative parents, are my chief concern, I know that the damage can come from the far left too. If we are engaged in the messy work of destabilizing a kid's racism or homophobia or transphobia, how much do we want the classmates' parents piling on? That's a teacher.
Where is that written?
Twitter. I'll send it to you.
Oh, I think I saw that thread. Yeah. Was it then he made his account private, right?
Yep.
And some of the responses, that's interesting that you got that. Yes. I mean, it just absolutely betrays the real purpose of schooling.
I was amazed at those thumbs up and yes. And what are we going to do? I was like,
other teachers chimed in.
And that's why I told somebody the other day, I said, by the time you're sick, the body has been dealing with the sickness for a while internally. Before the first time you ever cough, your body's been fighting it for a while. We're coughing a lot. This has been happening underneath the system, the radar. If you can hear that and not be terrified as a parent.
You know, let me ask you a question.
Uh-oh.
You see this corona thing. I don't know what you think about germ theory versus terrain theory or any of the, like, what's really the right thing to do here.
Mm-hmm.
But do you not see, simply by the way, all governments, let's just say almost all governments around the world, so laterally and longitudinally from the most local to the highest, are all in lockstep on this, which goes again to that Atlantic article, which I called the spiral of bullshit.
Well, that's your first tweet. So way to move us into the tweet.
No science. They are actually demonstrating in that thing how there is everybody's walking in circles like ants who have entered a death spiral. It's a long story, dumb, in that thing. But we're all walking in circles because we don't know what to do because we keep hearing different things and yada, yada, yada. And I just feel like the reason all that is happening is that there was no absolute crystal clear science, yet all of those leaders were in lockstep and we believe them. We say we don't have faith in Congress. We say we don't have faith in the media, yet every single person on earth practically has locked them, or at least in the Western world, has locked themselves in their home out of pure, unadulterated faith in the blah, blah that comes out of the media and the politicians. What do you think of that? Is that not terrifying to you, Clint?
It is. And I think, I think like most things in life, it's a little bit of everything and not 100% of one thing. In other words, do I believe the coronavirus exists? Absolutely. Do I know if it was man-made or natural? I don't know. There's articles either way, and the truth will come out one day, maybe, maybe not. What I know is, let me say this. I'm trying to figure out how to say it, because in the last 4 weeks, and this is where people got to be real careful how you talk with your fellow Americans, fellow humans. In the last 4 weeks, I've had 3 people, one I went to high school with, one I know really well from the political world, and another person that's just I know through Facebook, have passed away from COVID. One last week. Now, the issue I have with this is when people say that it really affects those with pre-existing conditions, and they just gloss over that. It's possible that this virus or whatever germ, whatever it is, it can affect those people with pre-existing conditions more, but people act like that's a abstract. No, pre-existing conditions are heart failure, or heart problems, or cancer, or obesity, or diabetes, immune problems. There's a list of pre-existing conditions that if you were to lay out, probably affects 60% of Americans. So the problem I have with it is, if you take a room full of 10 people over the age of 30 and say, how many people
over the age of 30?
Well, yeah, but that's what I'm saying. But that's, again, it's very nuanced. There's not if you're younger, then I don't think this affects you that much. But as you get older, there are 1,000 things that if you get are going to hurt you worse. Why? Because my body's old. It's been fighting for 52 years. So if I get something, of course it's got a chance to hurt me more.
And as we focus on germs instead of underlying health problems.
That's it. I'm more disappointed that the government hasn't come out and said, hey, by the way, we're going to fix this, but this is not going to be the only time. And if you want to be better prepared for the flu or whatever's coming next, or nature as it throws shit at us, then everybody needs to lose 20 pounds. Everybody needs to eat a little better, drink your water, get out and walk, do some things that are better for you. I've heard no real consensus from anybody. If you want to talk about leadership, tell us how tell us. You know.
I'm having all these hip problems ever since this thing started, just because my lifestyle changed so dramatically. And then finally I was like, I got to lose the weight. I got to start exercising. Like, I have to take control of this. And then when I saw the smoke coming, I started drinking this super, super concentrated vitamin C. I was like, that is bad for you. And I need to have my cells in really good health, because I got to battle that stuff. We're all congested all the time. It's the smoke. Smoke is so bad for you.
Clint Powell, if Clint Powell's 30 pounds overweight, I've not watched my blood sugar, I've not exercised, my lungs aren't in good shape to begin with, and then all of a sudden I get pneumonia, I get the flu or COVID, of course my body's going to be in a less advantageous place to fight it.
Right. But that's not what that's not what they're focusing us on. They're focusing us on something else. But what alarms me is that they threaten and actually follow through with, I mean, we are really getting USSR'd. We are standing in lines to go to the grocery store. We're waiting for products to be on the shelf, and then we'll go stand on lines to get toilet paper, in my husband's case, brisket. And like, I don't know if you know this, but we really, some countries are not allowing people from the United States to enter their countries. I mean, we have just, in all the times we thought American exceptionalism, which I know what that really means. It really means that we're an exception to the rule of nations, the law of nations, but people actually misinterpreted it because laws are laws. But anyway. But a lot of people thought that we were exceptional because we were better. And I would say that we had a better system if it were free, and that's why we had prosperity. But it was been clear to me for a long time that our system is not, we are not richer because the way we were in the 19th century. We were richer then, and there was less inequality of wealth, and there was greater wages actually went up. Standard of living kept going up before we had the Fed. But ever since then, it's been a question of who controlled the money supply. And we were in the ascent because that's where they wanted us. And now China's in the ascent because that's where they want us.
We'll pull it back, though, to the question you asked me about COVID. And then I want to go over 2-3 tweets before we leave. You said, do I not see this? And I'm like, I see it. But the problem I see is bigger than just, a lot of times the quote is, it's not so much the problem, it's how you see the problem. And I think the problem right now has got so many little bits of pieces of truth throughout it that we get confused. Yes, I think it's real. Yes, I think it affects older people. I think there is some reason to be more cautious. Do I think businesses ought to be shut down? I think that should be left up to the business and not the government.
Right. Like, doesn't it freak you out that the government can shut down everything? They're just shutting down everything. And we're going along with it, even if we don't agree with it.
I also think you ought to be able to have restaurants that if you want people to smoke in your restaurant, let them smoke.
Of course. It's your property. It's your property.
If you go in there to have dinner, it's your lungs. If you want to do that.
Right. But you know what? No, once you have Obamacare, they have a right over your body.
But that's the counter argument is, okay, but if you do that and you get sick, then Clint has to pay for it. That's
right.
But then we don't do that with soft drinks.
That's why you can't.
Not yet.
Well, Bloomberg tried to do it in New York with that exact argument. And that's why you can't have something called a left-leaning libertarian. If you're going to provide social services, it's why people I remember when first time I lived in LA and I had a baby child with Down syndrome, people would actually say to your face that it was a drain on society. It was an antisocial choice to actually go to have a baby like this. So I just didn't take their social services, nothing, but they thought it was the right thing to do to kill that baby.
All right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go through 3 tweets before we get off here, because you've already covered the first tweet with your spiral of bullshit.
Sorry, Mom.
Yeah. I didn't. Oh, by the way, I wasn't cussing Monica's mom. I was just simply repeating your daughter's filthy mouth language.
My tawdry tweets.
Another podcast, Tawdry Tweets. That's what. How long ago did we see this coming at Freedom Act Radio?
Yeah, that's Binkley. What was it about the flag?
Yeah, the African American flag.
So a long time ago, I had noticed, I'd seen that flag years and years ago. It's an American flag with African colors, and some of them are very pretty and whatever. But it's an American flag with African colors. It's not red, white, and blue. It's black, green, and red, I think. And Binkley had said, oh, they're going to try, when this Colin Kaepernick thing came, he said, they're going to try to take the flag away from us. And I said, or they'll swap it out for the African-American flag. And that is what the Kansas City Chiefs is being asked to do.
That's horse crap. And I'm completely against that.
Well, here's my problem with that whole line of thinking. And I was talking to a friend of mine who's my age, has a similar kind of rags to riches story. He was in finance, whatever, and he's a black guy. And I have so much more in common with him than either of us even has with our own children, to be honest, who were raised in like a more privileged thing, better educated and more stable environment, all that kind of stuff. So my point is that when you look around, African Americans and Americans, like is that two different things? Is it a subset? Because the kids in my class growing up in grammar school, first of all, we were all united by a religion. We were all Catholic. And then when I sent my kids to elementary school, everybody was Catholic. But there were tons of immigrants because a lot of Catholics now are from other countries. And we had that thing in common. And same thing with being an American, suburban, watching Fast Times at Ridgemont High or wearing Vans or whatever it was. It's just the American culture of materialism and consumerism and overindulgence and narcissism and whatever it is that makes us Americans. That's what we are. I mean, that dominates to me our character. Okay, if there is an oppressive element to your experience, and I myself had that kind of thing for various reasons. Yes, but it doesn't have to define you at the expense of the larger identity, which is, the context of your upbringing, of your entire life. And I actually think a lot of it is meant to destroy I remember in Atlanta, the people who were most woke and most skeptical and most unlikely to believe in the politicians' false promises were Black people who had been in the United States for as long as they could remember. Their families just went back and they were a little more woke. And I feel like to the extent that is the subculture's experience, then this exploits that for those same political people who have oppressed them all along.
Well, I think just like COVID, just like education, just like sports now, race too has been politicized and weaponized to actually be turned around and hit us. You remember when you see those TV shows or you take the fist of your little brother or sister and you say, quit hitting yourself, stop hitting yourself. Stop hitting yourself. I feel like that's what's being done with us right now. And I'll say this, I don't think a society, whether it's government, whether it's a country, or whether it's a neighborhood, if you're truly going to have community, I don't think you can exist without acknowledging things you have in common. You have to have something to build off of and say, okay, this is who we are. And if you lived in a country that was not working towards including more people into that base, then I would understand what we're doing. But I have looked back on our history and I've seen us maybe not always go linear, progressive, but we have bounced off the boundaries of trying to figure it out for over 200 years. And to act like we are the same now as we were 200 years ago is disingenuous. It's designed to shut down conversation. And if that's what you truly believe, then you're just not having conversations with people that probably love and respect you, no matter what you look like.
And I will say, I think it's garbage. If alienation is the problem, this is not the solution. But to your point, the fact that more people voted for Obama than for Bill Clinton means that it was beyond, or I think one possible interpretation is that that desire to heal was a deciding factor
And it could be that people didn't end up liking Obama, not because of what his color he was, because they didn't like the policies he tried to shove down everybody's throat.
So it would be Republican and Democrat. If it was the exact same split as with Bill Clinton, then you could just say it's strictly political. But he actually got more votes as a percentage than Bill Clinton. So then you could say, well, it could have been a political change of winds. It could, but makes it less likely that he was penalized for his color, the color of his skin, than. You know what I mean? So, but I just feel like the mood was of such a desire to heal at that time. And it was intentionally squandered by politically exploited people. And we're still living that.
Well,
right
if
now.
You can't have conversations about ideas of policies with anybody that's a different color without being a racist, that is Marxist at its core. That is designed
but it's
to
not
shut
true.
people up. No, it's not.
It's not true.
But there are
on
people.
The TV.
Well, there are people. No, but I'm saying I've had conversations with people where they shut it down completely. They say stuff like, "Oh, that's a nice opinion from the white guy."
Did you have a real conversation, or is it electronic?
Oh, I tried.
I tried. And no, like human beings that you're in the same room with talking to.
That's so this other podcast.
That's what I'm saying.
That's where you change things. That's where it's really hard to look at somebody that's a different color when you're not in surrounded by this energy of hate and divisiveness, and just say, "Hey, this is what I think. This is what you think." Once you sit down one-on-one, it's really hard to assign the other person evil intent when you start understanding. They'll listen.
I see that with the government workers. If you've got a cop or someone in the service or a public school teacher, and you say, "I think that those institutions are a big problem." And I mean, if you were going to say teachers, cops, and soldiers are just evil a-holes, and you sat down with any one of them walking down the street, you would realize that there is a point of view thing going on, and you just can't think that way about it. It makes you rethink even when they choose that role.
Yeah, it makes you rethink it completely when the narrative doesn't fit what you see on the media. And I'll say this, I'll throw another group in there, and then we'll talk about one more tweet. I have a lot of people that I know that have been to jail and been to prison. And if you take to 10 people that have been to jail or been to prison, you would be surprised that the majority of them too are decent folks. Even if they've served their time, they've done something wrong. And I'm not talking about the evil assholes out there that are out. There are evil, bad people that just need to be off the streets. Thumbs up to getting them gone. I'm all for it. But I've got friends that when you talk to them, you go, "Oh, what a good guy. What a good girl." And then you go, "Oh, by the way, they served 5 years for this 20 years ago."
Right.
And you're like, "Oh, yeah," because once you start to know people and understand the ebb and flow of life, of grace and mercy and education and learning, and that every story is not your story, you have to be a little more accepting. You don't have to lower your standard.
And how lucky you are to have gotten away with some of the stupid mistakes you made yourself. Like, I always think that. I'm like, man, I've made some stupid mistakes, and let's hope I don't have too many more ahead of me, but thank goodness, you know.
That's the reason I'll never run for office. Hey,
really?
One more tweet, because I know we've gone over, but this has been we've had 2 weeks of good conversation, Monica Perez.
2 weeks?
Yeah, I'm living what have you done for me lately world.
How can I say?
Georgia appeals absentee ballot deadline extension.
Good.
That's a good one. And then, hey, oh, by the way, shock. COVID-19 shot trials are on hold after some suspected reactions.
Actually, coronavirus vaccines have, you know what the side effect that why they've never had a coronavirus vaccine before? It makes you more susceptible to coronavirus. But isn't that
it's
called immune enhancement?
But I thought they gave you a dead version of viruses. Don't they give you
then why would it work at all?
Don't they give you a non-active version of the virus to?
I mean, that's what they say, although I've never understood how that could even work at all. But no, there's something, what they do, they have to put it in there with adjuvants, which are usually heavy metals that hyper stimulate your acquired immune system. And when they do that with coronavirus, it makes that immune system always freaked out when it's in the presence of coronavirus. It backfires.
Hey, do you ever listen to podcasts yourself, like long form podcasts? Okay.
No, well, I like information. But
I just did one with John and Eric, and we talked about what it means to be a Democrat, a Republican, a liberal, and a conservative, and a libertarian.
And who was taking the libertarian?
Eric's more libertarian.
Is he a libertarian?
He is. Yeah, he's more conservative, but he's voted libertarian, and he assigns himself libertarian views much more than he would straight line Republican.
Right.
And I think you would like that one because I think it's a pretty good one.
I try not to listen to arguments because I like to make my own.
Oh no. I think you would like it because there's some counter. I do with them what I do with you. Yeah.
Okay.
Do you have any gear to show us that you're selling, or did you?
Well, I only have my favorite coffee cup.
How are the sales going of those?
People love them. You know what they really love is the stickers. Isn't that funny? My propaganda report.
The little round stickers.
Mm-hmm. Did I send you one? I'll send you one.
No.
I can't even see them.
Tell people how to find out about your gear and what happens if they want to be a Patreon, or what happens if they want to listen to the podcast.
If you want my gear, go to thepropreport.com and just scroll down under the welcome thing and it'll say buy stuff. And I've got a really nice t-shirt. I don't know what I did with all this stuff. Anyway, so patreon.com/propaganda report is where you can get more than just my daily show, which you can get 30 minutes free every day at Propaganda Report on your favorite podcasting feed. But patreon.com/propaganda report, you get an extra 15 minutes. You get the cocktail parties. Sometimes you get early release. And I also have a YouTube channel. So if you're seeing this here, you can also see it on youtube.com/Monica Perez, where I just did one on Swapcast with a guy who runs the Flat Earth Project.
So that's okay if we stick timelines pretty hard. We're going to go over a little today because I want to ask you about the Flat Earth and the Ripple Effect podcast you did.
Mm-hmm.
Can they find those on YouTube?
Yeah, YouTube. Okay. That's my channel, youtube.com/Monica Perez. And the Flat Earth one, this guy reached out to me. He said, "Oh, I heard you mention Flat Earth. I want to educate you." And I said, "Okay." So I invited some friends and we did the podcast. And I'll tell you, I put it up on my YouTube channel, and man, did that get some hate and some love. Like, it was crazy. People were just mean, like, "You stupid bitch," whatever. I was like, I don't even believe it. You know, like, I just was listening to the guy, and then someone else was like, "Well, you can let the guy talk." And I'm like, that was that bothers you. I don't let you talk, but
that bothers you too. I know you a little bit. And when people respond like that, you're like, "Hey, I'm doing a good thing here."
Right. I'm doing the best I can here. Where are you? I've spent my whole life my most recent life trying to put a platform out there that I listen very respectfully to people's views. And I try to, if they're going off in the wrong direction, I try to get back. Anyway, I thought I did a good job. But it got a lot of hits.
What about the Ripple Effect? What's that?
The Ripple Effect, that's Ricky. He does also the Union of the Unwanted, where I have those up there. So there's like 10, 15 podcasters with some famous person, Del Bigtree, who did Vaxxed, the documentary. There's Richard Gage, who's architects and engineer for 9/11 Truth. And then Ricky runs that, and he had Binkley and me on his show, and we had a marathon conversation. So so if you've got some time, but I put that on my, let me see if I put that on my YouTube channel.
Well, also, I want to encourage people, if you're watching this, go to her YouTube and help her get more subscribers.
Oh, yes. I need listeners.
Yeah, I need page.
We need some listens, Clint, because if we get some good listens, we can put an ad on it or two, and literally it would make $1 a week. I
could use $1. I could use $1.
Hey, how about you? What about your Patreon?
Well, you can just look me up on Apple or any podcast platform at During the Break. I'm putting out a bunch of new episodes. I've done a couple of really good ones the last 2 or 3 weeks. You can listen to that Of, By, and For the People. I do about the American experiment with John and Eric. I put up one this week with a friend of mine who used to be a head wrestling coach, and now he owns a company called Her Better Way Athletics. If you're a parent of a child, a young kid, or a youth, you need to go listen to these podcasts because we talk about the parent's role, which is just so good. It's a really good podcast. And then I have a bunch of my media radio friends where we share some really good stories. And then I have Dayfire Podcast. My buddy Dawson Wheeler. We share stories about from the great outdoors, people that take crazy adventures around the world. We talk about conservation. We talk about tips and gear for paddling, hiking, climbing, camping, RVing. So anyway, that's how you can find me. And I got you got a bunch of people supporting you. I got 5.
Yeah.
I got 5 people.
Well, I put
10.
out a lot of content.
Yeah, I put out about 5 or 6 podcasts a week, and that's it. That's
I mean,
it.
that's
Now
plenty,
my Facebook,
but
my social media.
Yeah.
I got 7,000 views on social media last week on videos.
Wow,
Yeah.
really?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So, well, if you charge for the last half hour of every one of your videos, maybe you'll get more patrons.
I don't know how to set that up in Patreon, though. I don't know how to make it to where people.
It's not easy. We actually have to redo it ourselves. For John Jasper, I'm trying to go commercial free for John Jasper specifically.
And John Jasper actually.
Hey, did you get the mug? He got the mug. I think I sent him one of these. I was a little worried because he lives in the UK, and the shipping was going to be through the roof. But then the company that makes them sent it to him directly. Hopefully you get it, John.
Thank you, John. All right, Monica.
All right. Thanks so much, Clint.
I think we did a good job tonight. All right, do me a favor, though, and let's end it. And I don't want to make this the thing. I got to get a video of your mom saying goodbye so we can end every video with your mom.
Oh, my gosh. That's a job for Franny.
We got to send us just a 20-second video of her saying goodbye, and then I'll include that on every video. I think that would be awesome.
Come on, Fran. And it's got to be authentic, just right where she is. Bring it.
A lot of cuss words. We want a bunch of cussing. No.
I get in trouble for that.
Bye, Monica.
Bye.
See you, everybody.